May 17th, 2022. We have a quorum with all members present. Dr. Nivens?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Madam President, thank you for that. So Mr. Buchanan is going to come up. And so, again, it's a workshop, so it's a lot of question and answers. And so what we've done as a team is that we've kind of taken everything that we're going to need for the next 10 years, and then it's kind of like a buffet is how I've been describing it. And we'll just put it out there. And then, so this will be the first one of two that we believe we need to have. And the first one is talk about everything that we need. And then after this, let the trustees be able to take this documentation with them and start thinking about how to start piecing some of these things together for our next bond program. So I will turn it over to Mr. Buchanan.
Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, so we're ramping things up. Like Dr. Nivens said, this is our 10-year plan that we've developed, and it was a lot of this was driven off of the PASA study that we got in February. So in your binders that you have in front of you, the first thing that we were able to do is we took that data that they gave to us. We were able to label, took one of the pages from PASA, and we developed a long-range elementary summary for our district as a whole. So everything that you see in green, which is 31 through 34, we currently have funding either through the 2017 or the 2020 bond for those campuses. We do not have funding for 35 through 46. These are roughly where all of them are located. Again, these are estimates on what those geographic locations will look like from PASA. Those aren't solidified. Those are what we do through the rezoning process. But this is letting you know that majority of the growth is in the northern part of our district. We have a few that's in the north central section, and then we have the rest that are on the south side of our district. And that is your tab 1 in your binder that you have in front of you. So as we started developing this long-range plan, we took the summary that they had for these campuses on the elementary schools and laid them out. So that's the basis that we started with when we started looking at new campuses on the elementary school level. Do you have any questions about the map or?
So trustees, we also put a highlighter at your seat too, just in case. As we go through this, you start needing to highlight some line items. You can do that also. But as you can see, we have quite a few campuses that are not, we don't have any funding for yet. So that's what we're talking about, just throwing everything out there and having a buffet style so we can start talking about what needs to come first, second, and third.
So the next tab that you have is our secondary campuses. We did the same thing as we did with our elementaries. This is our secondary summary. Currently, we have funding in our 2020 bond for high school number 7, which is Tomas High School, Banks Junior High School, which is number 7, and then Steenbergen Middle School, which is number 6, which will go on the Randall and Wright complex on the south end of town. Currently, we do not have funding for middle school number 7 or any of the 3 campuses for complexes number 8 or 9 that they have allocated for our growth for the next 10 years. So this is the basis that we started with as we built our bond program and the budget that we're about to go over next. Are there any questions about our secondary campuses and locations? Okay. Okay, we'll get you that. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hamilton, could you pull up the spreadsheet? So what we were able to do is we took the next tab that you have is number 3, which is where we started developing all of the data that we pulled from PASA along with other data that we have in the district, and started laying these out over the next 10 years and what those costs would be. So currently, we've broken it down into instructional facilities. So right now, we have elementary school 35 through 46. The first column is today's cost, and that's based off the current pricing that we're getting now. Next is the year that it would open. So it would be the fall of 25 would be 35, 36. The fall of 26 would be 37 and 38, and so forth as we go down. The cost in column J is the cost that is built into escalations due to those opening later. So those costs of those schools, the further we push them out, cause those costs to go up. So once we'll go through all of this, we can go back tonight and work on some scenarios if you want. Also because you have it in front of you, if you want to earmark stuff as we go through them. These are the campuses that we have. After we got to the elementary schools, the Board of Trustees approved. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So when you say today's cost and you don't have the cost this one says cost of it, that is what it will cost us if we pass those in a bond this year.
That's correct.
That's automatically what those would cost us when we go through.
That's correct.
So let's say elementary number 46, we're projecting not to open till the year 2030. You guys are estimating $72 million for an 800-student elementary school.
Yes, sir. That's what the 7%.
So I want the public to hear that, $72 million for an elementary school.
That's correct.
I think we might need to start rethinking schools somehow. I mean, can we do steel buildings? Do those last 50 years or more? Because
Not right now.
that's an incredible amount of money for 800 kids.
That is correct, sir.
Right, so the current cost to build an elementary school, like, from the 2017 bond was what? Do you remember
That
offhand?
is that $44.4 million. Those are based on the construction numbers that we're seeing now. That's what we anticipate 34 costing us in today's dollars, is that $44.4 million.
So let me ask it a different way. Do you remember off the top of your head estimate how much Morgan Elementary costs to build?
I do not, off the top of my head.
72 million, this is, I don't know how the public,
This year. So if we wait, it'll be, or, well, I guess no, because it'll still be the same cost.
Yes, ma'am, because what we're doing is we're taking the 7% escalation, so it's 7% a year that we anticipate it going up as we start to build these. So that's why it's built in there. So depending on what year you open it, depends on how many years of inflation that we're anticipating it going.
right,
Also, due to this is, right now, we've been experiencing well above that for market value. We don't think that it's going to continue to go in that direction, but if we decide to break this up, then we can adjust those as we start to go through, depending on, what the economy's doing and what the prices we're seeing at now.
So not to go away from that question, I see Mr. McKeever in the back trying to figure out that number for the 2017. So I just want to make sure we don't go away from that. But go ahead, Ms. Danziger, and then when
I
he's ready,
said,
we can.
we've always tried to have either 3 to 5 elementary schools, have more elementary schools if we didn't have a secondary and a bond. We've tried to play with it a little bit, so it's not sticker shock. And I assume that's what you're trying to give us, the tools so that we can figure out how to get what we need, but not make everybody gulp big hard that we're having to spend this kind of money on schools.
Just a comment. We're asking you to do the impossible here, to ask you how much $1 today will be worth in 2030. So there's probably going to be a lot of, we're not going to hit this spot on.
That's correct. This is based off historical data that we've seen, trends that we've seen, and what we anticipate possibly happening in the future. But there are assumptions, like if inflation goes to 12 or 14, 15%, it's not built into our assumptions as we build our budgets.
So 7% is a safe assumption, or where do we get 7% from, inflation-wise?
7% as we look back over historical and seen what that looked like, the 7%, because you kind of take an average, because the economy tends to dip and rise and fall as it goes through, but that's typically what we've seen over the last decade or so. $27.8 million for Morgan Elementary.
That was the
17 bond.
17 bond.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
And that was, so currently, what has been up to this point, under $30 million to build a 750 student elementary school.
That's correct.
So we've bumped it up to 800, and these are the estimates we're getting.
That's correct.
I don't know if this is sustainable, not just for this district, for any district. I don't know how the taxpayers are gonna afford it. I mean, we pay federal and state taxes every time we buy anything, and then property taxes. I don't understand it. I don't know where it goes, but that's just a side comment. Nothing to do with your presentation.
Well, it does, because as we tend to deal with this, we're monitoring the market all the time, and we're monitoring what other deals are bidding, what those numbers look come back, and these numbers may fluctuate some, based off real-time numbers that we're seeing in the marketplace. The next section, after you get past the elementary schools, the board passed raising our maximum capacity of our secondary campuses from 2,000 to 500. When we started looking back at the numbers and the growth that we're experiencing, we were more than likely going to be able to get those 500-seat additions open in 18 months. If something were to pass, it's about an 18-month window to add 500-seat additions onto our current high schools, except for Lamar and Terry. We looked at those, the layouts and the land. We were not able to put an addition onto those in their current configuration. So what we looked at was Foster, Fulsher, George Ranch, Randall, and Tomas, which isn't even bid yet, of adding those 500-seat additions. That would give us 2,500 seats at the secondary level in the quickest amount of time to be able to relieve some of those pressures that we're seeing at those campuses. And in doing that, we also looked at ancillary facilities at the campuses, and that's why we have an additional gym, because you had those students for PE classes, athletics, things of that nature, and then also expanding our kitchen and serving lines to be able to handle that extra load on that campus. So that was one option that we were exploring to be able to address those needs at the secondary level. Are there any questions about that one section? So the next thing was middle school 7. We have high school 7 and junior high 7 as part of our 2020 bond package, but we don't have middle school 7. So that was the next thing that we were looking at to address the growth, was middle school 7. The next you'll see is the secondary complex 8 and secondary complex 9. Secondary complex 8, depending on if we choose those 500-seat additions, seeing what our growth looks like, that may be able to fluctuate a year one way or the other. It might not be in 26, but that's currently what PASA is looking at as far as our growth. And then secondary complex 9. So when you look at that, it looks like a very large number, but those are 3 campuses. So it's not a single campus. It is baseball, softball fields. It is the fields that we have at all our secondary campuses, as well as the high school, the junior high, and the middle school. So those are why those numbers look so large, is because that is a significant amount of square footage that we're putting in place for those campuses. Are there any questions on what we've covered so far? Okay. The next, as we started looking at other districts and initiatives that they have, the next thing that we came up with is Kate Center, and that's our Career Technology Center. What it would do is instead of putting small CTE classes at all the campuses, to have a centrally located CTE program that would be very robust, to be able to centrally locate it and then bus kids from those campuses to a centrally located campus to be able to experience those. A lot of those, especially as you start to go into their junior and senior years, some of those are multi-block deals where they'd be spending half a day at this campus and then moving to their campus back and forth. So that was one thing that we looked at exploring as far as the Kate Center.
So trustees, when we talk about multi-block, so you're thinking about just a regular high school schedule, you have a student that would go to, first period, second period, third period, fourth period. When you start talking about classes that are double blocked, that means now that student is in that one class for first and second period. And so that means that that teacher's load has been cut in half because they have to serve those students for an extended period of time so they can get their certifications and all those things at the end of the program. And so that's what grade means. We're talking about double blocked, and even some are triple blocked. And so when we talk about some students being in cosmetology, double block class, they may be in there from 8 to noon. Maybe the same, 14, 15 students in there with that teacher for that block of time.
Would that be different CTE classes that are going to be put into the high school that we're building the high school for? Or would be taking some of those out of those schools so that those rooms could be used for other classes?
Yeah, that's up in the air. We could do that.
I just
That's
don't know.
just a conversation we can have.
Because if
We
we're
can do that.
building the same size school that is housing CTE classes now.
Well, roughly the size of this would be what our junior high footprint is right now.
Okay,
So it's larger than what Fort Bend, their Kate Center that they just recently built. It is larger than that, but it is the same footprint that we have of our current junior high.
Could you talk about some of the programs that would be housed there?
So
What would
we
they
haven't done any programming yet, but that would be more of instructional. So we want to,
This is the first I'm hearing about it. If I don't want to misrepresent Dr. Randall's administration, but I think his philosophy was we have TSTC down the street, and that serves a lot of those needs that the kids would get at a CTE center. So I'm just kind of wondering what would be there exactly?
Correct. So it would include some of those classes that are at TSTC, but it'll also include classes, and I'm going to give you just some examples. It would include things like culinary arts, health science, which is also known as HST. It include things such as also any new programs, like if we want to do anything as far as law enforcement. Oh, I didn't know she was in here.
Sorry, I was printing your map, just what was the question? I apologize.
The Kate Center. the
Yes, sir.
CTE
So
center that the
what kind of
administration-
things?
What kind of programs would be housed there compared to what's on the current campuses now and the TSTC down the street?
Yeah, perfect. So one thing would be auto tech, also construction. Those are currently right now on a single campus, right? So we're having trouble. Sorry, I was running to get the map. I apologize. I think that I need to get some cardio in. So those would be facilities that we would be able to service the entire campus with, the entire district with, that we're currently not being able to do that. We would move things like culinary there. We would look at integrating cosmetology facilities there as well. So just more robust facilities in a CTE center that you would invest instead of putting it in each campus.
Would there be, sir, did you say that there's, Mr. Bates, there would be duplicate of some of the TSTC programs, or would not?
No, the goal would be that we would still partner with TSTC, right? But we would be using our home campus facilities, having our teachers being dual certified, or having a professor from TSTC come to that campus to provide services. If that makes sense. Currently, the way that our TSTC schedule is set up is it's a flex schedule, and it's kind of the minimal amount of students that we can serve, whereas if we're able to do it during the school day, we would be able to service a larger number of kids.
So if we did, like the automotive program is currently at Lamar High School.
Correct.
So if we move that there, that would free up space at Lamar High School for more growth potentially, as far as possibly using that space for classrooms. Is that the idea?
Yeah, if we're able to repurpose the space where it's kind of suitable for it to be a classroom, then yeah, we would be able, it would give us more space for classes like automotive or any other ones that we use the classroom for.
And on top of your question, but also, so somebody could take an automotive class, but they wouldn't necessarily have a multi-block schedule, so they would be able to do it at the like at Lamar still, but anybody that had more than one block, like a block schedule, would go to the CTE? Is that?
Yes, ma'am. So typically the way that the centers work, as I'm doing my research with other centers, is all of the intro level courses, so the lower level courses are still all offered on the home campuses.
Okay.
When they get to those upper level courses, the level 3 and level 4 courses where you're looking at certifications, right, things of that nature, the blocked courses, that's when they're traveling to the center to take those classes.
So this campus would allow our students to graduate with an associate's?
It
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, yeah.
That is a goal.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
And that was, my first interaction with our school district as a whole on a larger scale was I was advocating for a campus like this. So I love this because it will give our students, we'll be turning out professional mechanics right and left and
Yes.
teaching kids how to make a living, not take one.
Yes.
Is that it? Okay, thank you so much.
So the next thing after the Kate Center is land. I mean, we have all these campuses and we have all these secondary campuses. We have to have money set aside to be able to go purchase land for these campuses. Right now, what we're looking at in the land prices, especially in the high population areas, is about $10 million for an elementary school campus. That would include getting utilities and roads to these. And the other is $25 million for a secondary site. That's what we're looking at as we start to see those. So we've kind of broke them out in different blocks just to let y'all to be able to see what the dollar amounts are. Again, this is just a rough guess of what we wanted to be able to put in. It could be as many as all or as little as what we just need for the next bond. It just depends on what we choose, but those are the dollar amounts in a tiered way to be able to structure that. The next is portable buildings. As we continue to grow and we continue to lay this growth pattern out, be able to get schools on campus and still be able to handle the fluctuation of growth coming in and out. We wanted to give the board an option to see if they wanted to include some portable buildings. Right now, this past year, we're pulling that out of our general operating fund, which is affecting our general operating budget. So we're looking at exploring the option. Right now, it's about $5 million. That includes moving and purchasing new. That's what that looks like. So some of these campuses, as we open them, very much like Huggins, when we opened up Morgan, it freed up some portable buildings. Well, we're moving those this year. Well, it cost us to take down the ramps, take down the buildings, move them to the campus that needs them now, and reinstall it. So that is what that number looks like. That was our budget number as we started looking at portables this year, and that's where we started. And then you can see that we paired them in groups of two. So we'd be just 2 summers worth of portables, and we could include more or less, but that's an option that we just wanted to be able to explore and discuss with the board.
And so, board, we also have to have the philosophical conversation about rezoning. And we know rezoning is a highly emotional conversation and task to take on. And so as we have those conversations, then, it may help with the portable building structure, or it may not. But, we still have several elementaries that are underutilized and some that are severely overutilized. And so, still to be able to get those, all our facilities leveled. It's still a conversation and philosophical conversation that we have to have. Is how much do we want to tackle and how much emotion do we want to draw up in our community when we start rezoning students?
Are there any questions on what we covered so far as we start to go into the next? So the next one, if you'll notice, is labeled P1s. That is what you'll refer to as priority ones. These priority ones now were our priority 2s and 3s from our last bond. So what we did was we addressed majority of our priority 1s in the last bond. We took that facility assessment. So tab 4 is the 21-page list of all the campuses and all the work that would be done at those campuses to develop that. It ranges anywhere between child nutrition. Yes, ma'am.
So tab 4, like you were saying, is the details for that. We're moving on to tab 4?
Yes.
Altogether, we're done with 3?
Well, we'll be going back to 3, but I just wanted to highlight that one. The priority ones that you see are the 21 pages that you have in front of you. It expands everything from technology, which is some of our intercom systems, our campuses, air conditioning equipment, our child nutrition department, renovations to our auditoriums, lighting in those, LED lighting within the facility. So it covers a vast majority of what we have in our priority 2s and 3s from our last facility assessment and bringing those up to address those in this section.
So you said these priority 1s were priority 2 and 3 before?
That's correct.
Under the other survey we did, okay.
So what we did was we noticed that on our facility assessment that we had quite a bit that we didn't get to last time. Some of these, we have also gotten input from our fine arts department and our campus as we started doing site visits and things like that that have come up since those facility assessments were done. A couple of them with some vinyl wall coverings, things of that nature that had just gotten in bad shape since the last time we've done a facility assessment. And we're able to add those, add those few little things to be able to address those needs at those campuses as well.
We have priority 1, 2, 3. That was it, yes? Or were there more numbers? There are 4. Okay, so there's 4 up on there.
By when we would get to them.
Yeah, I remember the binders about that.
Yeah.
but I just don't remember all of it.
I don't know if Zach ever got to see that binder. It was
It was impressive.
impressive.
But it is a live document, right?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
But have we taken care of almost everything that was supposed to be taken care of right away? Or do we still have some left over?
Priority one,
Uh-huh,
there's still some projects that we're working on.
okay. But they're funded, right?
Everything that was in the 2020 bond,
Okay.
Okay. So after the priority ones that we have on our budget sheet, the next one was, in our last bond, we did a refresh of furniture. It was the $5.5 million that we had set aside, and we were addressing furniture at campuses that were older than 20 years old to be able to come in and address those. As we started going into those, majority of that work will be done this summer. We were able to address a lot of the student desks, student chairs, teacher chairs, and some other tables and desks in there, but it was not a furniture refresh throughout the campus. So they still have furniture needs that need to be refreshed at those campuses, libraries, cafeteria tables in the cafeteria, and also some classroom space and computer labs, and tables with trays, things of that nature. So we broke it up into 2 separate phases to be able to continue to address those furniture needs of those older campuses. Are there any questions about that section? The other thing as we started to look at was the Mno Substations. What those are would be outbuildings or buildings that we'd be able to put at each one of our transportation sites. Because now our maintenance people, if they're out at Fulsher and they have a part and they need it, they have to come all the way back to Richmond to be in Rosenberg area to be able to get their part and go back. What this would be able to do is put small little substation part houses at each one of our current transportation facilities for them to be able to go there and access and be able to keep more of the common parts, things that they need. Because as our district continues to expand, is to be able to cut down that windshield time that we have for those guys and be able to service our campuses at a greater rate. The next one was our transportation site. Currently, we have transportation number 3, which is in the 2020 bond. But as we continue to grow, transportation number 4 will be something that we'll need to address as we continue to grow. That number was 2028. We expect by the time we get 3 online, as we get close to opening secondary complex number 9, we probably need to have another transportation site to be able to handle the load of students that we have. And again, that is to increase our efficiency and the time that our drivers are on the bus along with our kids. Are there any questions about that before we hit the next one?
I do have one question. It just goes back to the priority 1, 2, and 3. How were those things identified? Because I wasn't involved in that previously, but also just for the public to know. Was it Mno going out and assessing, or was it listening to campus admin, or how did those things get? It was both.
I'll let Mr. McKeever, since he's
Amen.
here.
Amen. Because I wasn't either, so.
So we put together a team, and it had engineers, architects, and our staff, as well as questionnaires that went out to all of the facilities. And so the principals and each person at the campus would submit their questionnaires, and then that team from our staff, the architects and the engineers, walked every facility to create that book that they were talking about.
Okay. Okay.
It did.
Right.
It did.
Thank you. That helps.
So the next item that you see on the budget list that we did is we looked at some campuses that we currently have and then the land masses that they are currently sitting on. One that we came across was Travis and Taylor Ray. They're sitting roughly on the same campus. But with the land that they have and the way the campuses are joined, it gives us the opportunity, if we chose to put a prototype elementary school on that site and to be able to take those two campuses down. And then there would be a single large elementary school there instead of two small. We're continuing to look at those in those areas. This was just an option that we've explored, just because some of our facilities are getting to the 40, 50, 60-year age of life expectancy of our buildings, and looking at what those look like, and to be able to increase the technology, because we have some challenges that are in those campuses, along with others. But that was one of the campuses that we seen that was the easiest to be able to at least begin to have the discussion of putting a new campus and being able to replace an older campus with it.
You're saying because it costs us more to remodel it than.
Well, and some of the difficulties that we have, because at that point in time, to get those campuses up, expanding them, the amount of money that you're going to put into it versus building a new, these are just options that we're continuing to explore as our campuses continue to grow and our population continues to grow, just to be able to have the discussion of thinking outside the box than what we've traditionally done as we can try to address the needs that we have coming up.
So we have tentative 2026 opening for that. So that would be conversations happening, like, starting construction next year, in a sense, if you wanted to open by 26 on a
If-
campus that large?
If you wanted to, the other thing is this budget that you have is a living document as well. So if they wanted to kick it out to 2028, 2029, 2027, we could do those as well. I mean, this doesn't have to be decided now to be able to do something like that. We just wanted to bring forth options that we've seen that were easily be able to attain.
Was, in the 2020 bond, did we pass to give Travis Elementary a brand-new library? Yeah, I just,
Yes, ma'am. As we continue to look through this, especially like Lamar High School and Lamar Junior High, we've put quite a bit of money into those buildings, but again, they were built, the original section was built in the 40s. So as we continue to look at that, they're getting, to the point where, how much money are we putting in versus, do we need to start, replacing sections of it, or, just at least having the conversations.
what's in putting the two schools together as one big campus? Is that what you're proposing?
That would be, if we decide to go forward with that, yes, ma'am, we would have one large campus, and then one of the new campuses that we'd be building would, the name would, of the other campus would go with that new campus, would be an option.
That would potentially make that one large campus the size of like Hutchinson or
That's correct.
Arredondo or
That's
somewhere
correct.
like that. So right
Unless
now
you
they're too small.
rezoned.
Yeah,
It's just an option.
yeah.
Okay.
So trustees, just know that when the team brought this to me, first off, I charged the team. I said, we can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. So I asked them to be outside of the box. But also, when I saw this, I said, we're realizing we're going to ask people to have an emotional conversation with the logical, an emotional conversation with logic, and that's very difficult to do. Because when you have ties, historical ties like Travis and Ray do, you just run into a lot of separate issues. And so that is an option that is completely out of the box, is feasible, is doable, is useful, but we also know that is something that, is pretty hard sell. Yeah, pretty hard sell. But I did charge them to come up with, to have today's solutions and not use today's problems and not use yesterday's solutions.
Well, you do realize Taylor Ray was a 4th and 5th grade
Yes, ma'am.
campus once upon a time,
Yes, ma'am.
and then the other was K through 3. So- Huh? Was 6th grade there too? Until they opened up Jackson and Crockett, yeah.
Mr. Welch has a
So, let's say you build a school, would it be bigger than 800 students?
It would be the current maximum capacity of 800, yes, sir.
It would be a 800-student campus?
That's correct.
To take the two schools down and build an 800
That
student?
would be correct, yes, sir.
Wouldn't we be upside down there? I mean, don't we have more than that between the two campuses now?
Not currently. The way the demographers, those two campuses, the enrollment over the next decade, they tend to decline just a little. So that would be one of the ones we'd have to, work on their zoning as well to expand those as we move forward. But
I mean, I like the idea of it, and I don't have the emotional ties to it, but my first thought whenever I saw this was, holy cow, we're just spending all this money from 2020 renovating these buildings.
That-
And all
that
the
is correct.
technology in the library edition, I thought, why are we even considering this? I mean, I understand the thinking, but I would say put the brakes on the construction right now if we're gonna really pursue this.
Yes, sir, and those are things that we can discuss depending on the timing of this as we move forward. And again, some of these discussions like that one, it affects the P1s, because there's some P1s at both those campuses that, if, depending on what that looks like.
What would happen to the students that are there during the construction?
They would host at the current campuses. That's why we looked at that, is because we could actually build those and not affect instruction whatsoever. And then,
So you would build the new campus, get the new students into that campus, and then demo the,
usually what you do is you build a new campus, you move everybody out, and then over the summer, you would demo and usually pour parking or land space, that kind of stuff over the summer. So when they come back, they'd come back to a new campus.
So exactly what you said.
Okay. Okay, next.
The next things that we have are, our police department is coming out to bid and it's going to come back to the board for possible consideration in June. This is looking at long-term. That was a first phase of the police department, so we included phase two. That's towards the back end of that decade. The next one we have is the Brazos Crossing addition. That would be built on our current land. We own the land just east of this building to be able to build that there. This would house a lot of our PD, boardroom, more administration as we continue to grow, to be able to house and develop that here. The development center, we're in the process of exploring and developing a new technology center to be able to move them adjacent to the police department. So this would be to demolish it. A lot of people have praised that just being on the list because they've worked in that building, but that would be to take that building completely down and remove it from Lamar High School. And then the last thing that is on our instructional side would be technology phase two. That would be adding on to the building that we're looking at building for our technology. It would be a phase one, phase two approach for it. The reason that we drafted all those together is because those would be what we consider Prop A. There'll be a few things on the bottom, but that's majority of it. The next section that we get to would be athletics. Athletics, right now by law, we have to consider those different props. If you will look at tab 5 is our P1s at this time for Trailer Stadium. So that is where that $3.9 million is based off of, is these recommendations. A lot of them is LED lighting for the field itself, and then the turf. The turf has got a life expectancy of anywhere between 7 to 10 years, depending on the traffic that's on it, and it's about reached that. There are some ancillary costs there for the building envelope, and then drinking fountains, and then renovating the athletic office area because it has not been touched in a while. So that's where those P1s for the athletic department came on the budget. The next thing that we have that's athletic related is practice pools. We have 4 that we bundled together, and that is the Randall, Tomas, Terry, and high school number 8 would be an option to be able to do practice pools, and then a practice pool for high school number 9. The next 2 things is new land for the stadium. If we chose to go with that route, it's including that land as part of it. And the stadium itself, we built this pricing off a stadium that would house, it's roughly the same size that we currently have now. It is 10,000 seats. It would have some band storage, some CTE classrooms and locker rooms to be able to house that.
It's about the same seating that we have now, so trailers about 10,000 as well.
That's correct. So roughly, we would just take what we have and duplicate it.
It would be the aluminum seating.
That's correct. Or we could do concrete. It just depends. A lot of them, it depends on what you want to be able to do. Right now, the law has changed since we originally built our stadium, is you have to have a certain restroom count and certain water fountains and hand washing stations and things like that weren't in there. So a lot of people have gone to concrete masonry as part of that as well, because that way the locker rooms and those restroom areas, you can put stands on top of. So it helps reduce some cost. But we have not looked at design of anything. We're just looking at pricing, what it would look like.
At what point are we just gonna have to bite the bullet and see about getting a new stadium if we're adding all these high schools? Because I know right now it's a scheduling nightmare just with 5 going on 6.
We tried to bite the bullet in 2020.
I know, but I don't think we got the message out very well. I think the
When you
more,
say bite the bullet, you mean do it ourselves?
no, just really of us coming behind it. I mean, I don't felt like we last time really gave a lot of good information. I felt like the public wasn't well educated. And it was, I mean, we still have 5 schools, but we're looking at up to 9. So, and it's not gonna get any cheaper, that's the problem. So,
Well, trustees, you know, the philosophy behind our facilities and programs, especially a stadium, one is for everything to be completely student-driven. And so, you know, you start talking about a stadium, you know, we're in Texas, and, you know, football is king. But, you know, you talk about a stadium, and if you're not intentional about the conversation, people will assume it's just for the football team. But, you know, that's why we put on here, we will have AV classrooms. You know, I would love to see a cafe in there, so our culinary arts kids can run a cafe, and then we can start serving parents, and we can have AV classrooms in there. So as we have games and events going, students can video record those, clip the audio, you know, create commercials, and have a space to do all those things. You talk about the band, you have band storage, you have a band pad, so those kids can be able to use it. So it's more than just a football field. So I just want to say that out loud, because, you know, I played football a long time, and it paid for my college education. And so I'm a football fan, but the stadium is not just for the football team. It'll be for everyone that's involved. And as we talked about always, students have to be connected to something in order for them to be academically successful as much as they can be. They have to be connected to something. And we know when a student is connected and successful in extracurricular activities, they're just that much more successful in the classroom, because they go to work in the classroom so they can continue to do the extracurricular activities. And then they have the relationship with their teammates, the relationship with their coaches. And so now we're working on the whole child versus a student that is not connected and just going to school and going home every single day. And so we will be intentional about how do we make sure, if the board decides to do this, how do we make sure that it touches every single student in our district if they choose to engage in whatever programs that we're offering.
Would we realize any cost savings if we put some of the projects together? So I see Performing Arts Center, say we combine that with the Brazos.
Kate? Oh,
we have to do
It has
separate
to be-
bonds.
So if you go out and you say, you know, we'd like to do, the Kate Center with a Performing Arts Center, or the Kate with the new stadium, could you combine those and we would potentially get some cost savings?
We
When you're
can,
having a bid, is that what you're talking about?
yes, during the bid process, we would be able to, but the stadium, the Kate, and the performing arts would all have to be its own proposition. But if those passed, yes, we would be able to, if we chose to put them on similar sites, to be able to leverage a lot of the infrastructure and things like that, parking, be able to use from multiple sites.
But say if we go out and right now it says the Kate would be 171 million and the new stadium's 153 million, but if we knew that if we combine those, that the total would be, you know, 300 million, and then you could reduce the, you know, in the proposition, you could say, well, it's not really 153 million. We're gonna realize $10 million in savings, it's actually gonna be 140, and then maybe the voters will be more likely to agree.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I see that. That's a great point.
And as Mr. Hunt very eloquently said, we looked at the surrounding districts and districts our size, and that's where the Performing Arts Center came in. Right now, we've looked at some schools that have put some out. This would be roughly between right around 8,000 seating to be able to house this. So it would be a very large event center to be able to do more things than just performing arts. So this would be something that we'd be able to have theater, and we'd be able to have those type of things, but it would be a lot more of a multi-purpose type of atmosphere as well.
How large was it gonna be?
8,000 seats.
Convocation.
So the question that the public's gonna ask, especially we do a bond committee, is with the new Fort Bend Epicenter coming up, why would Lamar be wanting to build its own performing arts center?
So right now,
We have auditoriums at all the campuses, all the high school campuses, and we have other facilities we can use in the general area. And then we're gonna have that right in our backyard. So that's gonna be the question I think a lot of people will be, especially people who are not connected to the district who pay taxes. Why would you need to go build this whenever this is right here in your backyard? So I don't know if you have an answer now or not, but that will come up.
yes, sir. So as we're continuing to explore this, we're looking at every option that we have, and we're continuing to vet other options as we work through this. But yes, sir. And the last, is there more questions on that for our? Okay. The last two things that we have is our technology and transportation. Right now, these are in draft, along with our P1s, because we're still working and vetting these. A lot of things with our technology and buses, prices are continuing to fluctuate at this point in time so much that we're continuing to look at those and looking what those prices look like to be able to develop a good number to be able to bring back to the board. We think it's somewhere in this neighborhood. It may fluctuate $5 or $10 million one way or the other. It may go down, it may go up. But that is why we have those in draft form, because we're still vetting those as we go through those, because bus prices and technology prices are continuing to go up and down to try to solidify something as we get closer.
So trustees, the next step is you have this information, and kind of how we did the naming the facilities piece. You know, I'd like you to take it and think through it, and, you know, think about some priorities that you may see as you talk to your constituents as well. Some priorities that you may see that we need to have in our next bond election. But also, you know, those of you that have been here, and I'm gonna use Ms. Danziger's words about sticker shock. You know, is there anything that we want to present, or do we want to stay under, you know, the B when we go out total? Do we want to make sure we stay under that, or do we want to go over that? And so that's a conversation that, you know, that the trustees would have. And so then once you have that information, you can send it back in. You do it on paper, however you want to do it. If you would like an electronic copy of this, can you show the trustees, Greg, how that automatically calculates? So if anyone wants, if anyone wants an electronic copy of it, you can see how it automatically calculates the pricing. But Ms. Cohamilton's running it.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
She gets so happy to be
all
able
right,
to
we're
just.
gonna put you to the test. Let's see. See how it automatically populates. But then once you give us back your information, then the team can put it all together, and then we can see what the commonalities are in the proposals, and then come back and bring a final proposal to the trustees and see what you all think, how that looks. But this total is about $4 billion. What the total of all this, Greg, is how much?
Looks like 3.7 billion
Yeah,
is what we have
so
currently.
about $4 billion with a B, or $4 billion.
Yeah.
But, and the voters passed last time $666 million bond. I'm trying to remember what it was,
And so then,
but that's what they gave us.
and so another conversation is about our bond cycle. And so because now we are a fast growth district, or as I heard lately, a hyper growth district, you know, do we want to shorten our bond cycle, go every 2 years? Do we want to stay every 3 years? So that's another conversation we have to have. And so if we're going to go out for shorter cycles, then we can put less in to make sure we stay under that $1 billion. If we want to go out for longer cycles, we have to put more in. And then the conversation we had as a team is about voter fatigue. You know, if you go out every 2 years, the people start getting tired of voting and saying, didn't they just go out for, you know, $700 million 2 years ago? And so we just had to be strategic and have those conversations about, you know, a long-range plan as how we want to do this to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students.
And we can't burn Jill out over here trying to take care of all the bonds.
So did you say that the administration was proposing that we do this over 2 cycles?
No, sir. No.
That's us.
No, I'm proposing that we do this over 2 meetings and decide what will be in the next election in '22 if we call for one.
Okay,
And we could
So
do
that's why this
under
is
3
everything that's
cycles.
needed.
okay.
And so so now what I could do is take that and piece it together and see what you think is the priority for the next cycle. And then as we're talking about the total price tag, and then the frequency of going out for bonds. Do we want to do that every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years? And so, but really the priority now is to think about what you would like to see us put in bond 22.
Are you done now? Oh,
Okay. I was just gonna say, we're gonna wrap this up so we can have a short break before we get to our next meeting.
Is it the administration's intent not to put a citizen bond committee together?
That wasn't the plan, because we already have everything that we need. And so what we're gonna do was, after the board decided what was gonna be in it, then call a committee of people together to start hashing out some other objectives
We're gonna go
and
first.
information.
I would like to propose that we go back to the old way, because of the way we did it last time, and then I use Mr. Hunt. There was some security issues that they didn't put in there, but they had the option. And he wanted to put it in, and the rest of us agreed with that. I would like to start with we, the people, and let them sift through this, the parents, the taxpayers. It's a little more involved, but I think that would be the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the board's will. You know, it's your bond, it's whatever you wanna do.
And then we could take what they've said, and we could say, this sounds good, or we want to add this in addition to it, as the elected representatives of the people. But this way, I think that we circumvent that, and I think there would be a lot of people upset with us if
When do we have to call the bond to make sure it's on the election by August?
Yes, have to call it, I wanna say mid-August. Don't give me on the wrong date, but about mid-August, you have to call it to be on.
Of what
November
is
ballot.
actually going to be on the bond election?
Yes, to be on the November ballot, it has to be called in mid-August.
Okay, so we have a short period of time to get this done.
well, I mean, this is a workshop, we're talking, what do y'all think about it?
I think that's something we should come back to talk about
Yeah,
part two, right?
it's on. Hers is on.
Say that again?
I don't, can you
Is
lean
that
in?
something we have to decide right now?
I don't know that, yeah. So it's a suggestion that we can work
Yeah.
with, yeah. Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is one of those things that's a board function. And so the board decides it, the board calls it. And so if the board like to do that, again, I'm your employee. And so if that's how you like to do it, then we'll make it work.
So we can work that through that going forward. Okay, all right. Is that
Thank
it?
y'all so much for your time tonight. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you. Okay. So this completes the agenda items. The meeting is adjourned. The time is 6:23 PM.